we're going to just ask you a simple but very not simple question. What is your relationship with the brass bands?
With the brass bands?
Yeah.
Oh. Well, I first played in a brass band when I was 12 years old, which is a long time ago. And my relationship has developed so that I was a player, then a conductor, and sometimes a writer, but not much. And now, as the presenter of Listen to the Band, I'm Britain's face or voice of the brass band all over the world. And as I've got older, I've become something of an elder statesman, I suppose, but a bit of a irascible and naughty elder statesman who talks about perhaps what the brass band has been and what it might be in the future.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, what is Listen to the Band? Listen to the Band
is BBC Radio's only band programme. It goes out on a Tuesday night on BBC Radio 2, which is Europe's most listened to radio station. And of course it goes out also on the internet, so we have millions of listeners all over the world. But it's a half hour a week dedicated to bands.
And do you only play like championship section bands, or do
we play everything. We play wind bands as well as brass bands.
Wind bands, okay.
And we play anything that really is interesting. A lot of product, i.e. recordings and things like that, are not as good as the people who make them think they are. So sometimes we've got to be very selective about what we play in the knowledge that we're playing to the world. So it's got to be good.
How did you get a job at this radio station? How come?
Well, I started broadcasting in the 70s when I was a bandmaster in the army, and I was went to Cyprus, and they had the British Forces Broadcasting Service, and they asked me to do some programs. Then I went to live in Singapore, and they asked me to do some programs. And then when I came back to England, the people that I'd been working for told the BBC in London that this guy you ought to use. So I did bits and pieces. Then I left the army. I'd been the principal director of music of the army in Britain for many years. And then when I left that in 1992, it was a natural thing to go into broadcasting, which I love.
Okay, so you are here now in Sweden.
Yes,
at the National.
That's very clever of you to have noticed that.
Yep. And you have had a very interesting seminar yesterday about brass bands in the past, present, and the future.
Future,
right?
yes.
So that's kind of why you're here. But what do you think about the festival or
this festival? It's marvelous. Brass bands are a quite new thing in Sweden. And so you don't expect this to be as big as Norway, for instance, where they've had brass bands for a long time, or Great Britain even. But it's in itself, it's a well-run event. Everybody seems to enjoy themselves. It is competition, but nobody gets angsty about it. It's all done on a friendly, quite social level. And I like that. And slowly but surely, the brass band thing, rather than, let's not call it a movement or anything like that, the brass band culture will grow because it's a fun way of making music.
And you were adjudicating yesterday?
Yes.
The championship section?
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, I've got to adjudicate them again today, so it would be remiss of me to tell you too much. I thought at the best level, the couple of bands that played really well, it was very good. At the lower level, it was not so good, but that's the way of life. It's the same in England. Everybody talks about the championship section in England as though there are 20 world-beating bands. There aren't. There are 2 or 3 that are very good, and the rest are pretty ordinary. So it's the same the world over. And bands come and bands go. And as personnel changes take place in a band, or a conductor changes, bands have high points and low points, and that's the nature of it, because it's amateur music making, and you have to live with that. That's how it must be.
Yeah. So in England, is it very like competitive, or?
Oh, very.
Yeah.
And the 2 big competitions the Nationals and the Open, and shall we say Brass in Concert, are very big scale events. Royal Albert Hall is a massive hall, holds 5,000 people. So it's got to be a big event to fill it and one with another. And the kudos of winning that competition for any band is tremendous. The winners this year were Klara, who are statistically now the finest band in the world and have been for 2 years. And I think they probably are. I think it's fair to say that the way they make music is quite outstanding at the moment. But it hasn't always been like that. And in the future it will drop down from that peak because that's the nature of things.
Yeah, because we've talked to some other guests about that. In Sweden, when we have played, we go down to and sit down and listen to the other bands because they don't do that in England.
Well, they tend not to for a variety of reasons. One is that it used to be that when it was quite small, and in some of the small competitions now, that players can go in and not pay anything. They're encouraged to go, but now in the big competitions, if you want to go in and listen, you've got to buy a seat. And a guy who's been rehearsing a test piece for 6 weeks, why is he going to buy a seat to go and listen to another 20 bands play the same piece of music? That's worth. And I think the competition is so heavy in England that after a band has played, it's more likely that alcohol is needed more than listening to another band. There is a release in that, and I think that there's considerable tension about playing in like the Albert Hall or the Symphony Hall in Birmingham. They're big, iconic venues.
Would you prefer like a event with the best bands and very competitive feeling, or would you prefer like the Swedish kind of friendly style?
You will find that in 20 years' time, the Swedish style is like the English style, because there will be more bands and there will be there will be more good bands. And when there are more good bands, the benefits of winning within Sweden are so much that will come the tension of performing. So players will prepare harder, they will want to perform better, and with that will come a tension that changes the nature of the competition. So it will become more competitive. But it takes time.
What is your strongest memory of brass band?
Probably the most memorable time that I had in brass banding was between 1987 and 1992, when I was the professional conductor of the Klara band. And they occupied the position that Klara have now. They became quite simply unbeatable. But it was as a result of a tremendous amount of hard work and concentration, and the time was right. They don't have that kind of success now, and I don't do it any longer for many reasons. But it was, looking back, that was a time that was a meeting of minds, very clever and hard-working musicians who were prepared to do things the way I wanted to do them. So and what it resulted in, the winning it doesn't matter. What it resulted in was some quite extraordinary performances.
So you were basically the Philip Harper of Thorpe. Right?
Only not as tall.
Oh, no.
Philip Harper is the Frank Renton with Klara.
Yeah.
I did it first.
But we always have a brass band piece with every guest that called the brass band piece of the month. So you can choose which piece you would like in the whole world that we will listen to now.
In the whole world, there's only one performance that immediately I start listening to it, I'm there, and I can remember the performance as though it was yesterday, and that was Thorpe's winning performance of New Jerusalem a long time ago now in the Royal Albert Hall, which was a quite extraordinary moment. The pit was going to close. We knew that Thorpe was finished. Even the future of the band was in abeyance. And this extraordinary piece by Philip Wilby, the first piece that he actually written for brass band, which he wrote for the National Youth Brass Band of Great Britain, and then was used. And his juxtaposition of the voice of God. If you know this story of the revelation of St. John, when the voice of God talks about the New Jerusalem coming, and the old order is gone and the new order is coming, and the way that Philip Wilby couched that was absolutely superb. And that was right at the beginning of his career writing for brass bands. And I was lucky enough to be there at the right time to be able to conduct this music in the Royal Albert Hall. And it was just sensational.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank
a joy.
you so much.
You were a perfect guest.
Yeah,
You're very kind.
thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you.